What's up, Wargamers? Welcome to Champions of War. Today we're going to do a in-depth review of kruleboyz battle traits, some of their key attributes, command traits, some things to be thinking about, some things to be aware of. Now, you don't have to be a full-on kruleboyz player to get something out of this type of video. It's there for if you're trying to learn, if you're versing kruleboyz regularly, or if you've got a matchup coming up. Maybe you're playing a tournament this weekend and you know there's going to be a few kruleboyz players there and you want to know the ins and outs of what they can do and what to look out for. And if you're a kruleboyz player, you know what you're going to have to do and what things and how to weigh up when to use what and what to use it where, because we've got a lot of things in our util that allow us to either do some pre-game moves, some start of the game moves, things that debuff your opponent, slow them down, get them bogged down in that mud, that swampiness that we love to bathe in, and we cherish a lot in that sense. So first, I'd like to start off with some of our battle traits. And I have gone all over these sub-factions, the Grinning Blades and Big Yellows, in some previous videos. So if you wanted to go check them out, go check them out. I go quite in depth about how to build lists with each sub-faction and when to choose them and why. So it's a really great area to go and look at. Skullbugs, I didn't even bother going into because it's just hot garbage at the moment. Don't even waste your time using it. If you want to have a YOLO list and have a bit of fun with some friends, sure, try it out. But I wouldn't recommend it as of right now if you're taking it to a tournament. So the biggest thing, venom encrusted weapons. If the unmodified hit roll for an attack made by a kruleboyz Auric unit, which is pretty much everything except for your Hobgrots, model is a 6. That attack causes a number of mortal wounds to the target equal to the weapon's damage characteristic, and the attack sequence ends. Okay, so this ability has no effect on attacks made by a mount unless noted otherwise. So depending on your killer boss on Gnashtooth, his mount won't have it. There's some attack profiles. There's only one attack weapon profile on the Sludge-Raker Beast that doesn't get it, but pretty much everything else on him does. So it will say in the War Scroll if it does. This is what makes our army viable. It's what makes us good. We got shit bravery characteristic. We got low saves. Everything is there to say that we're a glass cannon house, but we can dish out mortals like that. And if you haven't got a ward or a 5-up ward or a 6-up ward, even 6-up wards tend to you get most of your damage through anyway, but you're going to be pushing over a lot of armies quite quickly. And if they don't position correctly and they are out of position to begin with, you just put them out of the water very quickly. And then we've got our kruleboyz Wah. Now, this is something that everyone I verse generally just forgets some point in the game because it's very unique. It's different to your other Wahs. It's different to your big Wah. And what this does is once per battle in the combat phase, you can, when you pick a friendly kruleboyz general to fight, you can say that they're calling a kruleboyz Wah. Now, if you do so, pick up to 2 friendly kruleboyz units wholly within 18 inches of that general who have not yet fought in that combat phase. That general and the units picked can fight one after another in the order of your choice. So what that means is you pretty much get a first strike on your general and 2 other units. You can lift up a lot of things with that ability, and people don't expect it. If you move up with your Sludge-Raker as your general, he hits very hard. If you've got a unit of 10 to 20 Gut Rippers in there, and you've got maybe a Mire Brute or maybe your Gobsprakk in there, because your Gobsprakk you're going to be wanting to take in just about every single kruleboyz list, especially in this GHB because it's everything spellcasting. Gobsprakk is great in a spellcasting meta, so you're going to be pretty much auto-including Gobsprakk. You send everything in at once, dishing out all these mortals before they even get to hit back. You should be able to lift just about everything that's there in front of you. So always set up for a kruleboyz Wah too. Be ready for it. Round 3 is generally when you're going to be setting up for a good big kruleboyz Wah, because round 3 is when you either table your opponent or when you get tabled. And the reason why we table them is because we set up nicely. We have our kruleboyz Wah punchback. Maybe our screens just got lifted. Round 2, they're charged in, screens are lifted, and we need something to come in as our heavy punchback. And that's going to be our kruleboyz Wah. Our general moves up. Our my brute moves into combat. Everything comes in. Kruleboyz War, attack with 3 units, bang, lift some stuff up. You have your shooting phase as well to shoot some things. You're going to be dealing anywhere from, let's say, at a really, really terrible, worst roll of your life, maybe 30 mortal wounds if you've set it up properly, up to a maximum, up to 60, 65 mortal wounds or wounds worth of damage. So it's nothing to blink an eye at, and it's nothing to just ignore. This is something that can win you a game on the spot. It's a round 2. Maybe you get the double turn going into round 3. It's game over at that point. So be ready for that. It's always nice. I always like to fight for double turns in round 2 going to round 3. So I give round 2 away if I can, if it's suitable. And I definitely do that, because if I fight and get the double turn on round 3 and I've set up for my Kruleboyz War, it's GG. The amount of damage I put out the turn before that, amount of damage I'm now going to put up round 3, that's equivalent to upwards of over 100 wounds, 130 wounds, around 120 to 100 wounds worth of damage within that double turn before they even get to have a next turn. It's crazy. You throw in a Merciless Blizzard in both of those turns as well, you're easily seeing that triple digit worth of damage done in those 2 turns. You push over just about everything. Next is a big one, and we've got our dirty tricks. Now, after the players have received their starting command points, but before the start of the first turn, you can pick 2 different dirty tricks to employ during the battle. So your options are Noisy Racket, subtract 1 for wound rolls for attacks made by enemy units in the first battle round. Okay. Lethal Surprise, roll 3 dice for each 4-up. Pick 1 different terrain feature or objective that is not wholly within your territory, and secretly note it down. The first time an enemy unit finishes a move within 1 inch of that terrain feature or objective, roll a dice. On a 2-up, suffers D6 mortal wounds. Just helps you sprinkle up more damage. Disappearing Act, roll 3 dice. For each 4-up, you can pick 1 different enemy unit on the battlefield that has not been reinforced. Then roll a dice for each unit picked. If the roll is greater than that unit's wound characteristic, the opponent must remove that unit from the battlefield and set it up in reserve. At the end of your opponent's first movement phase, they must set it up wholly within their territory, outside of 9 from you. Okay? This is a phenomenal dirty trick, and I'll go into a minute of how we'll work these into it, but it's really good, and it catches a lot of people off guard, especially if you roll 3 4-ups and you're picking up 3 units of their screens and all their heroes and foot heroes are just sitting there with their pants down, and you've got prior to take turn 1 if you like. See you later. Covered in Mud, roll 3 dice for each 4-up, pick 1 friendly unit that is not a hero or monster. While that unit is in cover, it is not visible to enemy units. It's one you won't pick very often. I wouldn't really blink much at it unless you know you've got big terrain features on the map and you're going to be able to get value out of that. If you're running big yellows, this can be pretty cool. Just gives you a bit of, what should I say? It gives you that invisibility that Grinning Blades gives you when you're outside of 12. So if you stay within a cover with some of your units, you're invisible, and you've also got that +1 to save as well on top when they do get into it. So to wrap this up and to kind of show you the bigger picture of what we're talking about with these. So Noisy Racket, great if you're versing an army that has big charges turn 1, big movements. You're versing a Gargan player that wants to move up 30 inches on the board and get straight in your face. You're versing a heavy cavalry list, Baron Guard, some Knights, Flesh Eater Courts that want to just run up and get into combat. There's a lot of these types of armies that want to deep strike, alpha strike, get in charge, turn 1, This allows you to give you that tankiness that we lack so very much of. Especially your Gut Rippers, if they're on the front line and they're the ones getting charged, they have a built-in -1 to get hit. Okay? First battle round, they've charged in on you. You have -1 to wound as well. If they're charging in, they're generally, let's say we be forgiving at 3s and 3s. Okay? They're 3s to hit, 3s to wound, -2 rend, 2 damage apiece. All of a sudden, that's 4s and 4s. Then you're forcing them to all-out defense. for 3s and 4s, right? And if they're 4s and 4s naturally, 5s and 5s, it's you're not going to take much damage. I promise you. They're going to roll 4s and 5s on no matter what unit it is. They're not going to get much damage through. You might get 2 hits or 3 hits. And if you need to, you can all out defense. So that way, if they do have -2 Ren, you can still roll a 6 up for your saves, just to give you a chance at rolling something. You might negate one of them. Beautiful. You take 2 or 3 damage, 4 damage that turn. Fine. Now, the only time you wouldn't take this is if you're versing an army that's all heavy shooting. They want to sit back just as much as you do. It's going to be a slow start, a grinding out game. Nothing's going to really happen until round 3. Don't even bother taking this one. That's when you start looking at lethal surprise. Roll 3 dice for each 4-up. Pick a terrain feature. Let's say on average you roll 2 or 3 of them, or let's say 1 or 2 of them. You pick 1 or 2 objectives, 1 or 2 terrain features. Anytime that they move within that terrain feature, on a 2-up, take D6 mortal wounds. This is a really good one to take, especially against armies that have low bravery, because even if you just roll a 1 or a 2, and they've got a unit of, say, 5 or 10, let's say 10, a squad of 10, right? And they've got a bravery of 6 or 5. You kill 1 or 2 of them, and they have a wound characteristic of 1, or even 2, say, and you roll a 2-up, and you kill just 1 model, there's a chance that they're going to flee. You're forcing him to spend a CP to inspiring presence as well if he wants to keep that unit alive. Pretty good value. Against high bravery, look, if you really need that extra bit of wound output when the game's going and you know you're definitely not going to need noisy racket, take lethal surprise. It's just going to add on a few more wounds for you. It's something that's worth taking if you need it. Disappearing Act is one I highly recommend. I love this dirty trick, and I love watching my opponent's faces as I roll 3 4-ups, pick 3 units out, and they've got let's say it's all their chaff units, their 1 wound or 2 wounds, and I just lift all their screens up. They look at me, their jaws drop, and they say, "Can I read that ability? That doesn't seem right." No, my friend, it is right. Pick those units up and get out of my face. It really hurts people. It puts them out of position. If you're playing especially, I've noticed with this one in particular, from my experience personally, in deployments that are it's halfway up the battlefield. Your deployment's half the battlefield. Your opponent is half the battlefield. Sometimes Disappearing Act actually favors some of their screens because maybe they've only got a 4-inch move and they've had to deploy 9 inches from your territory. Now that all of a sudden they can deploy right on the territory line because it's wholly within their territory. I find this one works phenomenally, right, at multiple things. On maps that have small deployments that don't go halfway up the battlefield, limited resources is a great example. Spring the Trap can be pretty good because you've got naturally just a 1x2 little block. So these smaller deployments where they haven't got much room to work with, all of a sudden make things really awkward for them if they have to redeploy at the end of their movement phase in their deployment. It really can hinder a few things for them, especially on limited resources where you've only got you're in a 1 block square in the back of your territory and you can only deploy back there. All of a sudden, their movement phase, you now have delayed them a whole turn of moving up the board. Fantastic. You can deny battle tactics, surround and destroy, pick up their units on either side of the board. If you see they're setting up for it, lift them up, pick them up, put them in reserve and say, "You're not getting it. I'm sorry, but you're not getting that battle tactic." You can deny those types of tricks. So it's a great one. You can even, if you get it off well enough and their heroes are exposed, super sneaky, a big thing forward. Super sneaky Bolt Boys. Super sneaky your Maya Brute. Fasten trait. Move him up with his mount trait in the hero phase. Charge, 4-inch charge. Bang, lift something up quickly while everything's in reserve. All of a sudden Lookout Sir isn't possible because you've just lifted up all their bodies. So they no longer have Lookout Sir anymore. You remove Lookout Sir. Now you're 27 inches. You're on the edge of your deployment zone. You can now snipe a few things. See where I'm going with this? Gives you so many options. It's really good. I wish the 4-up, rolling 3 dice on a 4-up. I wish it was like a 3-up or even at 2-up, because I find, like, a lot of other armies have things that just go off every hero phase, go off. They can choose it as a heroic action, they can choose it as this, they can choose it as that. For us, it's once per game at the start. Once you receive the starting command points, knowing who takes the first turn, you do it once, roll 3 dice. If you roll like 3 2s or 3 1s and it doesn't go off, like our whole, it's really frustrating as a kruleboyz player. It kind of just says, like, we've sat here, our army's not really doing anything. We've just wasted a whole, like, battle trait that did nothing. It's frustrating, and it will happen to you sometimes. The odds are definitely in your favor for it not to happen, but it does happen, and it is quite annoying. Covered in mud, I went over that briefly. Big yellows, if you really need it. If there's big terrain, use it. But generally, I'm switching between Disappearing Act, Lethal Surprise, Noisy Racket. Noisy Racket, I try and take most of the time, unless I know for a fact that I'm versing an army that's not going to be running in at me and charging me turn 1. That's where it works out best. So, and then next we've got some command traits. So we've got Slippery Scumbag, Super Sneaky, Egomaniac. Slippery Scumbag, you'll see not many people take, no one ever takes. I don't see it in any lists. I don't ever take it myself. I don't see the need of retreating and charging in a kruleboyz list. Most of the time when we charge in, we're hoping to kill whatever it's in combat with, because if we stay in combat, it's not going to be fun. I can see benefits of getting some battle. There's some battle tactics like Bait and Trap where you retreat with 2 units and charge with 2 different units, but even then this won't work because you got to charge with a different unit. So I wouldn't use it. I wouldn't waste your time. Super Sneaky is our auto take. 90% of the time you want to be taking Super Sneaky. And I did play around with Egomaniac where you can dish off. So I'll quickly read the both of them to give you a summary. So if the Super Sneaky, if the general's on the battlefield at the start of the first battle round, before determining who has the first turn, you can pick one friendly kruleboyz unit and set it up again anywhere on the battlefield that is more than 9 inches from enemy units. So at the start of the first battle round, before determining who takes the first turn, pre-game move, you can pick up a unit, any kruleboyz unit, pick it up, move it on the battlefield anywhere you'd like, right? The advantages, especially in competitive play, of being able to move your army during at the end of deployment, after he's finished deploying, you've seen where his army is. Now you get another upper hand move. It's really big for kruleboyz. Once again, we're a squishy army. We have low bravery. Our save characteristics on a lot of our screens are 5s and 6s. So we need to get some type of advantage. We need to get something to say, okay, if you've deployed in that sort of way, maybe outside of my 27 inches, beautiful. Okay, I have an option here. I can either now, if I see something lingering on the side, there's an exposure area, I throw in a hero that does a lot of damage, like my Brute Troggoth, right? Super sneak him forward, take advantage of whatever he's misplayed on. Okay, we move, hero move him forward, and we charge in, we kill whatever's there. Second option is Bold Boys, move them forward move them up, pick them up, move them all within a 27-inch range of wherever you need to shoot first. I generally sit on the 27-inch mark just to give myself some breathing room, because I don't want to go straight into the 20 inches, move them up 5, I'm 15 inches away. Okay, get the double shots, right? I do get the double shots in that, but I won't be getting the +1 damage from my Sludge Draco Beast. It'll be impossible to have them in range of a... It'll be impossible to have them in range of a shaman to give them mortal wounds on 5s and 6s with that poison elixir. So I just find sitting on the 27-inch mark, I can generally maybe preemptively set up a shaman in an area where I'm going to want to put my Bolt Boys. And then that way I can give them the poisons and 27-inch shoot for 10 shots with a group of 9 of them. This is big yellows, by the way. With a group of 9, that's 10 shots with 5s and 6s doing mortal wounds, trying to keep them in a 12-inch bubble of my Sludge Draco Beast. All of a sudden, 5s and 6s, 10 shots, you're going to average at least 2 6s, 2 5s, roughly, right? Maybe 1 5, 2 6s, or 2 5s, 1 6. Either way you look at it, every 6 is 3 damage, every 5 is 2 damage right through. They can't even make a save for it, only a ward save if they've got one. So all of a sudden, you're looking at around 10 damage straight away just because if they've made a mistake. There's a lot of mount heroes and a lot of mounted units that are 10 wounds, 15 wounds in the squad. So you might get lucky and spike and roll 3 6s and a 5, 3 6s and 2 5s. If you get lucky like that, and your 2s and 3s they hit anyway. So 2s and 3s -1, 2 damage, and you can running big yellows. You can re-roll in one of the dice as you roll on the hit. So if you roll 10 dice and there's say 1 1, 2 2s, 3 2s, or there's 2 1s, you just re-roll, pick up the dice that roll the 1, re-roll it, maybe you get another 6. You just re-roll it, get a hit, bang, go straight to the wounds. All of a sudden, the capabilities of doing 10 to 18, 10 to 18 damage is within scope, depending on how you roll. 10 is on the lower side, is on that more average side. 18 is on the higher side. Maybe on the low end, if you really botch your rolls and you roll like 3 1s, 4 1s, and no 5s or 6s, maybe you only end up doing 4 to 6 damage, right? And that's if you roll terribly. At that point, throw the dice out, get new ones. So yeah, they're your options. You can super sneaky up forward. Also, Hobgrots, your cheap 80-point screen, unit of 10. Throw them in. Just throw them in the front, in the gut, somewhere that you need to get control of, and you don't want them just running up with their cavalry through an area. Just throw them outside of 9 of them. Force them to charge into you. If you want to take that turn 1, you can. You can move them up 5. All of a sudden, at best, that unit that you've thrown the Hobgrots at can only move 4 inches up. 1 inch forward, charge, get in. Maybe they pile in another 3 inches up, but if you flare out your screen enough, that 3-inch piling won't get them very far. So you're kind of just delaying them even further. And if you've gotten off Disappearing Act as well, right, you're even further delaying them. So your Disappearing Act, your cavalry, you're locking down the cavalry with your super sneak, with the Hobgrots. All of a sudden, you've got full control of Battle Round 1, and you know for a fact you're going to be safe. You're not going to have like 12 Arangard and a Be'lakor sitting on top of your army, or you're not going to have you're not going to have like 3 squads of Direwolves, some Soul Blight Gravelords, or you're going to have options to be able to outplay these types of things, and slow your opponent down, and that's what we're about. You get your Summon Boggy Mist off with one of your Shamans or your Gobsprak, and you table wide, -1 to charge for your opponent, +1 to charge for you. So all of a sudden, those 3-inch charges, they need a 4. So statistically, their chances of failing a charge is slightly higher. They should generally make a 4-inch charge regardless, but you've made it a little bit harder. Alpha striking armies, instead of it, they deploy outside of 9 of you, they need a 10-inch charge. Statistically, the average of 2 dice is 7, so you're not going to be getting, on average, they're not going to be rolling 10, 11, 12-inch charges. If their whole army, all the Alpha strikes, and they've rolled 12 across the board on everything on that turn, and you have Summon Boggy Mist off, that's just unlucky. That's just them getting super lucky, and they'd be smiling ear to ear on that. You can't win. You can't do much about that. That's a dice game for you. Egomaniac. Now, this is an interesting one. Egomaniac. I'm torn on it. I love it. I love Egomaniac. But Super Sneaky is just so much better, right? If I could have them both, I would, right? I wish we did. We actually kind of need it as kruleboyz. We're that much of a fragile list. Why can't we have that? It would be very strong if we did. But, you look at a lot of the armies out there, and a lot of the army lists that they've got, and you kind of sit there and you go, hang on a minute, I've got to roll 3 dice on a 4-up just to get one of my spells, one of my battle traits off. And then now my command traits, I've got to pick between, okay, the pre-game move, fantastic, but my generals are pretty weak. Right, I've got no ward saves. I have no way of getting ward saves unless I take Amulet of Destiny, which is a 6-up ward save, which I wouldn't even bother with. This gives you that tankiness. If this general is within 3 inches of another friendly unit, roll a dice before you allocate a wound or mortal wound. So you still get your saves, right? You can still attempt to save on it. Whatever you fail on your save, now you can then pass them off. So instead of making a ward roll for this general, which we don't have anyway, on a 4+, pick one other friendly unit within 3 inches of this general. That wound is allocated to that unit instead and cannot be negated. So on a 4-up, it's pretty much giving you a 4-up ward, but to pass off. And for us, it's fine. And this is where Egomaniac is really good on, if you need to keep your Sludge Raker alive and you need that +1 damage. Maybe you're running a fat screen of Gut Rippers and you got some Monster Killers in the front. You've got like 20 or 30 Gut Rippers and maybe 10 a squad of Monster Killers. Okay, you can start dishing out those unit wounds a bit more. You can keep him alive anytime he takes damage from a range shot or from whatever. You on a 4-up, give it to someone else. 4-up, give it to someone else. You put it on your Gnash Tooth, your killer boss on Gnash Tooth, right? Everything within 3 inches, he can pass off on a 4-up. On his War Scroll, right? He's got everything within 3 inches, can't fail Battle Shock. If you do fail Battle Shock, right? Only 1 model runs. Now, when we've only got 5 bravery to 6 bravery at best on all of our units on our screens, right? You lose 1 model, you have to roll a Battle Shock. Okay, so this allows your Gnash Tooth to be super tanky for 1. He's 10 wounds, 3-up save. Okay, and you got a 4-up dish out on mortal wounds to something else. Fantastic. He's going to stay alive for a lot longer. He's going to keep your screens alive for a lot longer. Cool thing to note here as well is you've got your Scumdrek, Swamp Boss Scumdrek, our unique named hero, similar to the Sludge Raker. But what he has is he has a bet. He has like a little betting system that he likes to do on his War Scroll. And what that means is you can pick one Hobgrot unit to be the bet, and you can pick, to be the Cunning Crew, I think it is, and you pick another unit of your list to be the bet. And this is where this is awesome, because if you run 2 Hobgrot units, Hobgrots naturally are with a 1 wound each, 10 models. Die easily, 6-up save, bravery of 4. You blow on them and they fall over, okay? So what you do here is, and this is where it gets pretty cool, so Scumdrek, if you do that, and if the bet dies first, you get to pick an extra Triumph, which is awesome. Triumphs are huge. Triumphs are great. Sometimes it might come in clutch for you where you can give yourself +1 to wound, right, on your attacks. Give them to your Bolt Boys when you really need to hit hard and do some damage. +1 hit, +1 wound, all that attack. And your, I think it's called Bloodthirsty, right? Awesome. All of a sudden your double shots, instead of being 4s and 3s, they're 3s and 2s. -1, 2 damage. 6s are 3 damage. 5s are mortal wounds as well. This is crazy. This is where it gets really cool. And you kind of have control over that, right? You have control over now with your Swamp Boss Scumdrek. And the cool thing about your Swamp Boss Scumdrek is that he has a better snatch and grab, which is snatch and grab is any model within 3 inches of him, he can roll 2 dice. And if he rolls higher than the wounds characteristic of that model, he eats it, as long as it's not on a mount. Okay, so foot heroes, anytime a foot hero gets near in combat with him, a lot of people forget about this. I sometimes forget about it because I'm like, oh, wait a minute, I can eat that hero. And you just eat it. And they just sit there and go, what? 5, 6 wound hero, average of 2 dice is 7 wounds. Most foot heroes are 6 wounds. So on average, you're going to be rolling higher than it. And Scumdrek is equal to or greater than. So even if you roll a 6, you still eat it. Whereas the Sludge Raker Beast, the non-named hero, you have to roll greater than the wounds characteristic. So it's slightly better. I think that covers that pretty well. If you guys have anything you'd like to mention in the comments, let me know if you have any changes there. Want to go over Eye Biter Ash. Once per game at the start of the combat phase, you can say that the bearer will hurl the Eye Biter Ash at a foe. If you do so, pick one enemy unit within 3 inches of the bearer, roll a dice. On a 1 and 2, nothing happens. 3 to 4, subtract 1 from hit rolls for attacks made by that unit for the rest of that phase. On a 5+, Subtract 1 from hit rolls for attacks made by that unit for the rest of the battle. Cool, does its thing, makes you be a little bit more tanky for that phase. It means that whatever they attack, -1 to hit. On a 1 to 2 that nothing happens though. That's a big gamble for an artifact to do nothing. To me, is too risky to take. There's so many better artifacts that you could be taking. I don't think that's worth it. I reckon if it should be a 1 to 2 -1 to hit, 3 to 4 -1 to hit and wound, and on a 5 up -1 to hit and wound for the rest of the battle, or maybe a 6 up -1 to wound for the rest of the battle. That I would take it guaranteed. I'd probably take it most games. With this, never. Don't touch it. Don't look at it. I think if you ever do take it and you roll a 1 on a 2, you will then watch this video again and you'll come and comment and tell me, why the hell did I take that? Do not do it. Mork's Eye Pebble, great one. So this gives you, once per battle, at the start of the enemy shooting phase, your bearer will rub its Mork's Eye Pebble. Beautiful. If you do so, the bearer and all friendly units within a 12-inch bubble of the bearer have a 5-up ward until the next phase. Now, you have this on your Sludgedraker Beast. What's on his War Scroll? Everything within 12 inches gets +1 damage on an unmodified roll of a 6, which benefits your Venom and Encrusted Weapons. So you've already got a 12-inch bubble on him anyway. So you run your shooting, you put him on your Sludgedraker, so that means all your army within that 12-inch bubble is now got a 5-up ward for that whole shooting phase. This is really good for armies such as Big Yellows. Certain Grinning Blades lists, you can run it because, you know, at some point they're going to come in within 12. So Grinning Blades, it's still good because they got to move up, get within 12, then they shoot, and then you go, hang on a minute, now that you're finally being able to shoot, I've got a 5-up ward against you as well. You're going to negate a good about 20, what the average is like 30% of the damage you will negate through your ward, as well as whatever you can save on it. It's really big. It can change the pace of the game, and it can catch your opponent off guard thinking they're going to do a lot of damage in that shooting phase. You've got no wards, blah, 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 blah. No, 5-up ward. Sorry, mate. Beast Killer Slot, cool one. Again, start of the combat phase, you pick one enemy monster within 3 inches of the bearer. Roll a dice. On a 1, nothing happens. 2 to 5, that monster suffers D6 mortal wounds. On a 6, 2d6 mortal wounds. Pretty good. Pretty big. Again, on the 1, nothing happens. Risky. Do you want to risk your artifact to power? Right? For a 1, nothing happens. Monsters. Some lists run monsters, some lists don't. So again, taking this to a tournament, you're probably going to have a few games where this does absolutely nothing for you. I guess the same argument can be said for Mork's Eye Pebble, but I think you're going to run into shooting more often than you're going to run into monsters every game. And you've got to get your bearer in combat with that monster for it to even activate, and then you've got to roll higher than a 1. And sometimes, on average, statistically, you can roll a 1. It's not impossible. So the average, 16% of the time, you won't ever even be able to use your artifact to power. Do you really want to take that chance? Do you? I don't. Spiker Seeds. Once per battle, after an enemy unit finishes a charge move within 6 inches of the bearer, you can say the bearer will throw their Spiker Seeds. If you do so, roll a dice for each model in that unit. On a 5+, the unit suffers 1 mortal wound. Now, this is pretty decent. Pretty good against Horde armies. You can find that, you know, if they've got like 30 units in a squad and you're rolling 30 dice, each 5-up's a mortal wound, it's nice. It's good. Does its damage. If you're not versing Horde armies, you're not going to do much damage with it. But at least there's no roll a dice on a 1-up, on a 1, nothing happens. It's consistent. You'll get it off most games. At some point in every game, a unit's going to finish a charge move within 6 inches of you. At some point, every single game, right? At some point, it will happen. You can activate it and get a couple of damage in. It's nice. It's like your lethal surprise. So you have the advantages there. My 2 biggest points, and what I would highly recommend, would be your Mork's Eye Pebble and your Spiker Seeds. They're your 2 best options. If you want to go your Beast Killer Slop, if you know you're versing a tournament and there's a lot of monsters in there, and maybe your meta you're playing, there's monsters galore, okay, run it. You're going to do, if you roll a 6 and you roll 2d6, brilliant. but you have the same chances of rolling a 1. If you do roll that 602d6 and you spike on that and you do 7 damage on average, 7 mortal wounds in addition to whatever your shooting does, on average your standing still shots do 10 damage on a 3-up save, okay, 4-up save. So you'll be able to lift most monsters with that. Not many monsters are higher than 16 wounds. Not many heroes, in fact, are higher than 16 wounds, or 17 wounds, I should say. So your chances of killing it are quite high if you do roll that 6. So if you roll the d6 and you roll a 3, which is your average, 3 or 4, you see how you go. Sorry, it's not the average. It's just d6, so it could be random. You got a 16% chance for anything. So just see how you go with that one. But yeah, I find Mork's Eye Pebble, I run Big Yellows a fair bit recently, and I like having that backup in case they do get within my range before I get to shoot, or maybe they take turn 1 and they can move up 10 inches on that 27-inch line and they've got a 20-inch shot. All of a sudden they're shooting on my Bolt Boys turn 1. I want to reduce that damage as much as possible, and I'm generally deploying everything within my 12 inches of my Sludge Raker, okay? Everything that's important anyway. So you're just giving your army-wide 5-up ward for that turn of shooting. Yeah, it's great. Gives you that backup. So yeah, that kind of what I wanted to summarize and what I wanted to go over on that one. Again, leave some comments in below. Let me know what you guys want to hear next. Let me know if you want me to cover some other lists, maybe different armies. I'd love to get stuck into some other lists, but at the moment I'm just maining kruleboyz. Got some big tournaments coming up, so I want to make sure that I'm focusing in on it and sharing whatever my knowledge is with you guys. All right, peace. I'll catch you in the next one.